Hi everyone, it's Ben from Trekitt and we're here in the Ingate Bothy today and we're going to talk to you a little bit about a few different stoves and why you might choose one stove over another one for different adventures that you're going on. So starting at the lighter weight end of things, we've got a little Soto Amicus here. Doesn't have to be this one, this is just the one we're working with for this video. We've got a whole range of lightweight backpacking stoves. This guy's really great because it is tiny. Take it off and he will fit in your pocket, he says. I wouldn't recommend storing a stove here, but you get the idea. This guy's really good as an individual backpacking stove because he's so small, so light, and is really great for boiling water. This particular one comes with a pot kit, and once you've boiled things on it, it's great because you can just pack everything away into a tiny little pot, weighs next to nothing, packs down nice and small in your pack. So everything's in there, nicely done. And this guy is really useful for an individual for cooking meals in, so sort of boiling the bag meals or dehydrated meals. Or you can also, if there's two of you, get a couple of brews, cups of tea out of it. But it's not really suitable if you're cooking for more people. As soon as you start cooking for more people, this guy isn't as stable as some of our bigger stoves further down the line, and it's just not as appropriate for that sort of use. So what I mentioned just now was about the size of the pot. Comes with a little one like this, perfect size for sort of one, maybe two of you, especially if it's just boiling water. If there's a bigger group of you with a slightly bigger pot, here's one I prepared earlier, doesn't really work. You're not getting nearly as much heat over the entire area, so it will take a lot longer to burn. If you've got a pot that's got a much bigger burner head, it will help. Otherwise, this is also now considerably less stable because you've got a much bigger object on top of it. Maybe not the one for cooking for large groups. The other thing, in the wind, I'm going to stop, that's really, really annoying. Sorry, Harry. The other thing is wind, because you've got quite a small burner head. This guy right here, it's a little bit dished, so it will stand up to a little bit of wind, but ideally you want to be protecting it from the wind to keep it a little bit more efficient because you've got such a small burner head on it. A little bit of wind will blow out part of that flame. Moving on a little bit to something somewhat similar, still really useful for backpacking, is a Jetboil. This particular one is a Jetboil Zip. You've also got the likes of like the MSR wind burner and things like that, but we're using a Jetboil for this example. These guys, as the name might suggest, really good for boiling water. You know, if you're after a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or a boil in the bag meal or dehydrated meals, these things are really great for that because they just boil water really quick. Less ideal for cooking dedicated meals on if you're trying to sort of simmer and actually cook real food rather than a dehydrated meal. But then the clue's in the name, it's Jetboil, boils water. And best part about it, if you get his hand in there, you get a sticker. But this guy, again, packs down nice and small when you're finished using it, but super useful for one or two of you for just boiling water. Everything packs down nice and neat, all the way in the bottom there, gas canister in the top. There's your package. Moving further along the table to something that might be a little bit more appropriate for the likes of sort of group campers or someone that's after using a bigger pot. We've got something like the Optimus Vega. So this guy is a remote canister stove, which is why the canister is over here, rather than screwing onto the bottom. That means that you can get a bigger base that's going to be more stable, better for putting your bigger pot on top of. So you've got a bigger burner head, it's going to be less affected by the wind because you've got more power to the stove, and you've got a nice stable surface to put a big old pot on. Does mean that it's a little bit bigger to carry in your pack, it's going to be a little bit heavier. But if there's more of you, say you're on a group DV expedition or you're going away for a longer period of time, you want to do a little bit more cooking, a few more home comforts rather than dehydrated meals, this guy starts to make a little bit more sense. Still uses canisters, everything like that, and when you're finished with it, it does still fold away relatively small and unpacks from canister pretty much the same way. So you've just got a smaller package like this that you can then pack away. But otherwise it's just a little bit more powerful than the likes of the Amicus. Moving further up the chain, if you are someone that's potentially going to be traveling to other parts of the world, I guess when we're allowed again, or you're not going to have necessarily the availability to pick up little gas canisters. So say you're traveling further into Europe or more out into the wilds, say you're up in the Highlands of Scotland, a little bit more off-grid, you can go over to something like a Polaris. So this guy is just an example of a multi-fuel stove. So this stove in particular is, again, a little bit bigger, more suitable for group cooking, things like that. But the real advantage of this guy is that you can use both canisters or you can use liquid fuel with it. So we've even had people that have come back to us and said in dire emergencies, they managed to use whiskey and things like this. Wouldn't recommend it, I'd just have a cold meal, but there we go. But you can use both fuel types with this. Only thing with it is you've got to quite like pumping. The main disadvantage of something like a Polaris or any multi-fuel stove is that basically you're going to be carrying more kit. It's bigger, it's heavier, especially if you've got a fuel bottle and you've got to carry that fuel in. This package is obviously a lot bigger than something like this guy. On something that's a bit of a wild card, very different to all the other stoves, we've got a solo stove here. This guy works basically on biomass, so twigs, sticks, leaves, anything that you can find really, as long as it's combustible. Wouldn't recommend small woodland creatures, they don't burn very well. But this guy means that you don't have to carry any fuel in with you. You can just, when the mood takes you, stop, throw a bunch of twigs in here, set it alight, and away you go, and you can keep feeding it through the hole on the back here. And once it gets going, it will start burning, and then it's capable of boiling a much bigger pot of water. And in theory, you're never going to run out of fuel as long as you're in sort of a wooded area, something like that. So maybe one for the sort of bushcrafters and people that are going to be a little bit more static in the woods rather than your backpackers, because this thing's made out of stainless steel. It's very big. It's a lot heavier than some of the other ones. But, you know, you can go completely off grid on it. You don't have to worry about finding liquid fuel, carrying a bunch of extra gas fuel with you. But as I say, big old beast. So just a little bit of a summary on all the stoves that we've talked about today. These two being the sort of lighter weight, more backpacking focused stoves have a lot of the same advantages and disadvantages, although the Jetboil is a little bit different. So they're both very lightweight, nice and packable. The Jetboil is better in the wind just because of the burn-in design, but other than that, you know, they're not as well suited to group activities. They're more suited to a solo backpacker, or maybe if there's two of you and you're just sort of boiling water for dehydrated meals, cups of tea and coffee. A remote canister stove makes a little bit more sense for groups. It's much more stable because the fuel is separate, so that means that the stove can be much closer to the ground. It also means that you can cook for much larger groups because you've got a bigger burner head, it's more stable in the wind. Disadvantage, it's less packable, it's a bit heavier. It won't pack down quite as small as the likes of these guys, and these guys have a pot included. You'd have to have a pot separate for something like this. Multi-fuel, pretty much the same deal. Great fuel availability because you can use gas or liquid fuel, so pretty much anywhere in the world you'll be sorted. It's just bigger, heavier, there's more to think about with this guy, and it's just less packable again. And then the solo stove is really well suited to if you're out in the woods doing a bit of bushcraft, things like that, or you're going to be out for considerably longer periods of time, but potentially a little bit more static, purely just because it is so much bigger and so much heavier than some of the others. But fuel availability is in theory infinite because you're in the woods. You can find sticks. Hopefully that little rundown on our stoves was helpful. If you'd like any more information on any of our stoves, click the link that's on the screen now, or if you'd like to see them in person, you can head to the Hereford Service Centre and book an appointment with us and we'll be happy to show you them. Thank you very much for watching. Paul would say something like toodaloo now. I'm just going to say goodbye.